I'm 56 years old. And 5 years ago, the woman I spent 30 years of my life with told me I was a failure. Not in anger. Not during a fight. She said it calmly, like she was stating a fact. We were sitting at the kitchen table in the house we bought when we were still young enough to believe life would always move forward together. She had a glass of wine. I had a cup of coffee. And she looked at me and said, "Michael, I don't think you ever became the man you were supposed to be." I remember the sound of the refrigerator humming in the background. It's funny what your mind holds on to when your life quietly cracks in half. For 30 years I worked as a mechanic. Nothing fancy. No suits. No corner office. Just grease under my nails and honest work. I fixed engines. I worked overtime. I paid the mortgage. I raised our daughter. I thought that was enough. Apparently, it wasn't. She had been spending more time with her friends lately. The kind who post pictures from resorts and talk about investment properties over brunch. And one night she told me something else. "I feel like I wasted my life." Those words hit harder than anything else. 30 years. And to her, it was wasted time. 2 weeks later she moved out. No screaming. No broken plates. Just quiet packing. Suitcases rolling across the floor. The day she left she paused at the door and said one last thing. "You're a good man, Michael. Just not a successful one." Then she walked out. And just like that, the house felt bigger than it ever had before. Too big. That night I sat alone in the living room. No TV. No music. Just silence. And for the first time in decades, I didn't know what to do with my life. I was 52 years old. Too old to start over, or at least that's what people say. But something strange happens when your life collapses. You either disappear, or you start rebuilding. And my rebuilding started with something completely ridiculous. A phone. A cheap microphone. And a story, too. A few months after the divorce, my daughter bought me a smartphone. She said I needed to join the modern world. I barely knew how to use it. But one night I stumbled onto a video online. A man was telling a story about his life. Just sitting in a chair. Talking. Nothing fancy. But millions of people had watched it. And I thought, that's strange. Because mechanics hear stories all day long. People tell you things when they're waiting for their car. Divorces. Regrets. Mistakes. Life. I'd heard thousands of stories sitting in that garage. So one night, out of boredom more than ambition, I opened the camera. I sat at my kitchen table. Same place where my marriage had ended. And I told a story. Just a simple one. About a man who drove the same truck for 40 years because it reminded him of his late wife. I uploaded the video. And I went to bed. The next morning I checked my phone. 17 views. I laughed. 17 people. That's barely a dinner party. But something inside me felt good. So the next night I recorded another one. Then another. Most of them got maybe 50 views. Sometimes 100. But I kept going. Not because I thought it would go anywhere. But because for the first time since the divorce, I didn't feel invisible. People were leaving comments. Real ones. "Thank you for telling this. My dad used to say things like that. You remind me of my grandfather." It felt strange. Comforting, but strange. Then one evening, about 8 months after I started, something happened. One of my videos exploded. I woke up and my phone was buzzing like crazy. 10,000 views. Then 50,000. Then 200,000. The story had traveled somewhere across the internet. And suddenly thousands of people were listening to a 53-year-old mechanic talk about life. Within a year, the channel had grown bigger than I ever imagined. Sponsors started emailing. Podcasts invited me on. And the weirdest part, people kept saying the same thing. Your voice feels honest. I guess 30 years in a garage teaches you how to talk without pretending. But none of that prepared me for what happened 2 years later. The moment when the past knocked on my door again. 2 years after my channel started growing, something surreal happened. I got an email from a television producer. They were putting together a segment about unexpected online creators. Regular people whose voices resonated with millions. They wanted me on the show. At first I thought it was a scam. But it wasn't. 3 weeks later I was sitting in a studio under bright lights. A makeup artist was dusting powder on my forehead. And I remember thinking, 30 years ago I was rebuilding engines. Now someone was asking me about storytelling and life advice on national television. The interview went smoothly. The host asked about the channel, about why I started it, about what I learned from people over the years. At one point she asked me something I didn't expect. What's the biggest mistake people make in life? I paused, and then I answered honestly, believing someone else gets to decide your worth. The audience applauded. The show aired a week later. Friends from the garage called me laughing. Mike, you're famous now. But the strangest message came 3 days after the broadcast. A text from a number I hadn't seen in years. My ex-wife. The message was short. Hi, Michael. I saw you on TV. I stared at the phone for a long time. 5 years of silence. And suddenly, she was watching again. Another message arrived. I didn't realize your channel had become so big. Then another. Maybe we should talk sometime. I leaned back in my chair and looked around my small apartment. The same apartment I moved into after she left. Only now the walls were covered with letters from viewers. Pictures people had sent me. Notes about how the stories helped them through difficult times. I thought about the night she stood in the doorway. You're a good man, just not a successful one. Funny how time changes definitions. My phone buzzed again. Michael. I typed a response. Then deleted it. Typed again. Deleted again. Finally I wrote just one sentence. Simple. Honest. And final. You already said everything I needed to hear. I put the phone down. And that was the last time we ever spoke. Not because I hated her, but because sometimes closure doesn't come from revenge. It comes from realizing you no longer need the approval of the person who once doubted you. 5 years ago she believed my life was wasted. Today millions of people listen to the stories I almost never told. Life is strange like that. Sometimes the moment someone stops believing in you is the moment you finally start believing in yourself. So let me ask you something. Have you ever had someone tell you that you would never become anything? And what did you do after that? Tell me your story in the comments. I read more of them than you might think. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Because every week we talk about life, mistakes, and the quiet ways people find their strength again. And trust me, some of the best stories are still ahead.